The NFL has seen some incredibly hard and violent hits over the past 40 years or so, both legal and illegal. And while most hits have you cheering in the stands, you're still left wondering whether or not the players will be able to get back up again. In this video, we're going to list down the 10 most devastating hits in NFL history. Let's get into it. First off, at number 10, we have Dunta Robinson playing rough. The first hit on our list was just traumatizing to look at when DeSean Jackson, who was 5 foot 10 inches and weighed around 165 pounds, got into a violent helmet-to-helmet collision with Dunta Robinson. The two and everyone in the crowd worried, as both the players were down for several minutes before being helped off the field. Dunta Robinson actually frequently gets into these kinds of collisions, and in the same year laid out Eagles wide receiver Jeremy McLin too. Due to him being a repeat offender, Robinson was fined $50,000 but wasn't suspended. Later, after an appeal, the fine was even lowered to $25,000. Eagles wide receiver DeSean Jackson and Robinson both ended up with concussions. The incident resulted in a 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness during the game. All things considered, this hit definitely belongs on our list. Coming in at number 9, Reggie Bush's close call. It's fair to say that Sheldon Brown knocked the wind out of Reggie Bush in this hit. It was probably one of the squarest, most flawless tackles we've ever seen in NFL history, and Reggie looked like a rag doll in front of Brown. The fact that this tackle was completely legal is what makes it so much more interesting. Brown chose to target Bush's torso rather than his head. He led with his shoulders squared up and did something that most NFL defensive backs overlook in practice sessions. While Bush tried his best to stand up, he immediately fell back down, which just shows how serious the collision was. After all of this, it seems like the hit was the only thing people could talk about. Despite the Eagles' 27-24 defeat, Sports Illustrated still featured Brown tackling Bush on its cover. If this had happened today, Brown probably wouldn't have been allowed to get back to the field again. Moving on to number 8, Brian Moorman knocked to a different dimension. Brian Moorman had the unfortunate experience of going head-to-head with Sean Taylor, and we can't say we envy him for it. This play is actually very popular among NFL fans. It started off with the AFC team trying to fake a punt from its own 48-yard line as Moorman grabbed the kick and dashed as if his life depended on it. Unfortunately, his run didn't last long as he was decked to Kingdom Come by Sean Taylor. As Moorman hit the ground, you could practically hear the crowd wince. Eventually, Moorman got back up and actually applauded Taylor by saying it was a good hit. Taylor only participated in one Pro Bowl during his short career, but he definitely left a lasting impression. For number 7, Cedric Griffin nearly decapitates Billy Miller. Cedric Griffin's hit on Billy Miller of the Saints was one of the more memorable ones. Miller was knocked to the ground by the Vikings CB. He flung himself from the sideline. After this, the athlete was down for a few minutes, which had all of us at the edge of our seats. But thankfully, he got back up and walked off the field. Since it was a helmet-to-helmet collision, Cedric was fined. A lot of people actually blamed Devery Henderson, a wide receiver with the Saints, for not blocking Griffin. Football is an incredibly passionate sport, however, and both players understand the risks that come with playing pro. Next at number 6, Johnny Knox's unfortunate injury. Johnny Knox was on track to become one of the best wide receivers in Chicago Bears history before his career abruptly ended. Knox's career was cut short by a spinal injury that happened only a few days after the birth of his second kid. About 4 minutes into the game, Knox had received a pass from Caleb Hanney when Cam Chancellor poked the ball out of his hands. Anthony Hargrove hit Knox as he dove to catch the ball, causing him to bend backward. He was treated by medical staff while lying down for about 10 minutes. Knox had to undergo surgery and still suffers from the injury. Moving on to number 5, Darrell Reed leveling Chris Henry. This play shows Reed absolutely destroying Henry as the player tries to return a kick. The Tennessee Titans player was lucky to have his shoes stay on after being struck by his opponent, who goes by the nickname of Wrecking Ball Reed. But it seems like the player had no sympathy for the incident. He downplayed the collision, saying it wasn't a big deal considering Henry got back up on his own. Those of us who have seen the clip know how hard of a hit it was. Up next at number 4, we have Jack Tatum versus Sammy White. Tatum reserved his greatest performance for the game that would change his life. The athlete brutally knocked Sammy White unconscious as his equipment, including his mouthpiece, flew through the air with just one strike. The Vikings receiver miraculously managed to keep the ball with him while being trampled by Tatum. In the fourth quarter, Oakland safety Tatum solidified his reputation as one of the biggest tacklers in the NFL by pinning White as he grabbed a pass across the middle of the field. White did eventually come back on the field, but by then, the Vikings had already lost the game. For number 3, let's look at another Jack Tatum hit. Jack Tatum struck Stingley at the wrong angle when he crossed the middle, which unfortunately left Stingley paralyzed. Tatum later said that he led with his shoulder and that the contact on Stingley was only a clean hard hit, and even though the result of it was unfortunate, the player never actually gave Stingley a proper apology. While he is right that the hit was clean, saying sorry for basic courtesy. While people argue that the hit was unnecessary, others believe it was merely a rough football play. Thanks to his friendship with Gene Upshaw, Stingley was ultimately highly effective in getting compensation for NFL players with disabilities. He and Jack Tatum will always have bad blood, though, due to the incident, and let's just say that we don't blame them. More than half of Darryl Stingley's life was spent in a wheelchair, and at the age of 55, Stingley unfortunately passed away due to his injuries. Coming in at number 2, Eric Smith's brutal assault on Anquan Boldin. Eric Smith gave Anquan Boldin one of the hardest helmet-to-helmet hits ever seen in NFL history when the player went up for the ball. Similar to the hit between Deshaun Jackson and Dunta Robinson, both the hitter and the recipient were knocked out for a spell. A lot of people who watched the match live said they clearly heard the collision as well as the silence that followed when both players didn't immediately get back up. Boldin had many facial fractures but continued to play a few weeks later. The fact that he was able to recover from such a hard hit and continue to run through the center speaks volumes about his strong mentality. Smith received a 1-game punishment, which, to be honest, should have been a suspension. Fortunately, this hit did not result in any fatalities or significant injuries. The hit seemed a lot worse than it actually was. Smith made a comeback after the incident and participated in the following game. Finally, at number 1, Lawrence Taylor ends Joe Theismann's career. Was there any question as to which hit would go down in NFL history as the most catastrophic? Lawrence Taylor's hit on Joe Theismann is most definitely one of the most horrific injuries the sport has ever seen. Taylor correctly predicted the play when Theismann tried to throw to Art Monk downfield. He grabbed him and brought him to the ground as they both fell to the ground. Taylor's 243-pound body struck Theismann's right leg awkwardly, and he immediately knew how serious the injury was. Theismann suffered a tibia and fibula fracture. In other words, his right leg's lower leg bones were broken between his knee and ankle. As a result, his leg was horribly bent in several directions. It's very obvious from the clips of the hit that it was very violent. It caused Theismann to take a much earlier retirement. Thankfully, though, Theismann has gone on record to say that he's recovered completely from the injury and faces no pain. Those of us that watched it happen to remember it very clearly and can say that it's one of the most unsettling things to ever have happened in the NFL. After Theismann was carried off the field, his backup, Jay Schroeder, a powerful former baseball prospect, took over and led a spectacular 23-21 victory. What nobody knew at the time was that Theismann would never get back on the field again. Well, that's a wrap for this video. Which hit did you think was the most horrific? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.